Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki, Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I'm very excited to have with me John David Graham, and let me tell you about John. He is the founder of Good Samaritan Home, a housing and mentoring program helping men and women restart their lives after prison. Prior to that, he was a door-to-door salesman, children's home counselor, substitute school teacher, truck driver, fireman, building contractor, minister, and journalist. As you can see, he has a lot of life experience. Sometimes the road home takes many twists and turns to develop what John calls calloused hands and a tender heart, which he used to write his award-winning debut novel, Running as Fast as I Can. It is a reader's favorite and has held his book as truly a masterpiece, and it won 22 awards, including American Fiction Award, Independent Author Award, and the Firebird Book Award. So we're going to talk about second chance careers. Please join me in welcoming my guest, John David Graham. John, so excited to have you share your story and the things
very
that you're
glad
doing.
to be here. Very glad to be here. Listening to you read the resume, I'm a little it's a little overwhelming remembering all of those things myself, because I'm flashing back to all those years of changes and instability, and second chances being polite. I'd say we're talking about 8 chances.
That's all right. It doesn't, just till you get it where you're happy. That's what matters. So what part of the country are you living in now?
Well, that's an interesting question, because Good Samaritan Home is in Ohio, Western Ohio, near Dayton. And I've been here, since probably 30 years or more. I did my graduate work here. But my building business was in Texas, because Texas for me was always a place of second chances. Historically, that's where people went to start over, including Davy Crockett. And you see how well that worked for him. But I went to Texas to reboot my building business, but after a time, that's when I went back to graduate school and came up to Ohio. But now I go back to Texas to do my writing. So I'm actually in 2 different worlds on any given day. Today I'm in Ohio.
Yeah, Texas and Ohio are 2 different kinds of cultures for sure.
Oh, my word. When I get off, I have a picture in my car thermostat, thermometer. It was 114 degrees when I left. And the truth is, I love it, because it's like a warm blanket around you.
Mm-hmm. And
sure. Today it's been raining for 3 days in Ohio, so I think we're getting ready for the winter. Yeah,
we had good bit of rain too from the hurricane here in Atlanta.
Now you had some serious rain.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So you started to talk a little bit about your story, and your story, I think it's a big part of having people understand about second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth chances.
That's right.
So share a bit about your story that really has taken you from that young man to where you are today and doing what you do.
I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and when you could work in a factory and you could make a decent working class living, but it was a wholly different world then. And families were not as interested in this connection and fathers being involved and mothers being involved. Basically, we got up in the morning, we went out, and we just disappeared for the next 12 hours, and we came back and went to bed, and there was no connection, particularly if you're in a working class. I went to school with people who may have been, their parents were professionals, and they expected them to go to school, to college. They expected them to be professionals. They talked to them. They taught and encouraged them. But I had none of that. So I ended up going to college and just getting a degree in psychology with no direction at all what to do with it. So I just went from job to job to job. So I was educated but undirected and uncommitted. And I think that's a fairly common thing we're seeing today too. So I went from going from a children's homes counselor, a truck driver. The fireman was a great job, but I just didn't fit well with it because I call being a fireman, it's 95% anticipation, and then it's 5% sheer terror.
Yeah.
And if you don't, the anticipation, the preparation, it can be extremely difficult for people like me who like to be moving. So anyway, all that said, that I went from job to job to job, and here I was, the father of two children, and I was 53 years old, and I did not have my connection where I belonged. And in effect, I had failed at many jobs because not that I couldn't do it, I just didn't fit in. And so I told my wife that let's do something that I feel is what our passion is. And at one point, I had been homeless in all those journeys. So I had a great deal of compassion for those who were in that plight. So we opened up, we bought an old house and started remodeling it. And we used that as a homeless shelter. And we were taking in strangers into our own home, which I would not recommend.
Yeah.
But eventually, the next year, we were able to add another house, and that became a formal shelter. And then following that, the Department of Correction came to us because we're in Ohio, and they said, we would like to have a place for low-risk offenders coming out of prison who are homeless. Because if somebody has a stable place to live, we feel that they will actually make it. Rehabilitation is based on stability. And if you have housing, you can get a job. So we started doing that. And one house led to another and another and another. And we started off with just one or two men. And today, on any given day, we have 19 houses, and we have upwards of 80 men and women living in these houses in the Dayton area. And it's not a halfway house, it's a mentoring house. And the idea is we give you a safe, stable place to live at no cost. And in return, we want you to get a job, and we want you to find your own place. And that may take a year, it may take 6 months. Or in Jimmy's case, he came to us when he was 67, and he stayed 14 years. And when he died eventually at 80, he said, this was the only home I ever had. So that to me was, I was 53 years old, had numerous failures, and finally found my niche in helping others who had numerous failures.
Wow. It's so interesting. I was born at 58, and my dad was a postman, plus he had 3 other jobs. And my mom didn't work. So one of the crazy experiences, like my dad was always going somewhere, and we snuck in on his postal car. He's retired now, so he can't get fired. But I snuck in and went on his route with him. And I saw all the kids like running after my dad, smiling, laughing, running after my dad. And I'm thinking, why are they running after my dad? And they were like joking with him. And I thought, my dad doesn't do that with us. And then I, realized that he doesn't have time to do that with us, but he would like to. And so I have a brother who's 20 years younger than me. All the other kids were basically out of the home, and my mom and dad got to raise that boy totally different than us, be the dad. And with grandkids, he's that postman that was chased after because everybody loved being with him. So I totally could understand what you were talking about in that.
The book I wrote was fiction, but it's based on the experiences that you and I are talking about, because you and your brother grew up in totally different homes,
Yeah, we
and
did.
You were related. You had the same name. You lived in the same address, but you were different because you had, in effect, different parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and it forms how you are, with my kids. My husband and I have always been really involved with them all their lives, and with the grandkids now too, because I know it's like I didn't want my kids or my grandkids to not know that they were loved unconditionally,
Now, you raise an interesting point, because I think in this generation, there's a great deal of emphasis on sharing your feelings, and letting children know. And it's difficult to explain to my grandchildren that we never did that.
Yeah.
You just did not talk about emotion, did not talk about feelings. You just didn't get arrested at the end of the day. That's all the parents cared about. In fact, I joke about it, but I said I came home with a C grade and said top grade in the class. They don't give anything higher, and they believe that because yeah, there's not that connection, and the idea of I used to joke and saying that I played my position on every sport in high school was left out. So,
So good.
so today parents, they traipse all over the country because their kids in organized sports, but we didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
I like to say we grew up alone.
Yeah. Yeah, in a lot of
That's
cases.
not bad in itself, but it can be bad if you don't have the direction that's needed to go to the next step.
Yeah, I think one of the things that helped was, we had a whole neighborhood full of kids, and I had the biggest yard. And so we had play sets and things and that. So all the kids came to our house. So my parents felt like, okay, we know where they are. But, we basically had breakfast, went outside, did not come back in until lunch or dinner, because that was, stay outside. You don't hang out in the house.
Now, I will say this, I may be showing my age, but I think today kids are more lonely, more separate, more isolated, and it's because of their phones.
Yeah.
They may be all in the same room, but they're all looking at their individual phones, and the families are doing it at the dinner table even.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of that because it's our drug.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the idea in the book, was that everybody has an isolation on some level in some way. Some are more extreme, some are in abuse, but we all come from some degree of dysfunction.
Yeah.
And without the community helping us, without some mentor, we'll never rise above that. And that's what I was trying to do with the book, is encourage people to keep running, so to speak.
Yeah. So you talked about community, and also you started this home for prisoners. And so, I'm thinking of where I live now, or at any time, what kind of community resistance did you have when they found out that you were going to have, a dozen or more people that just got out of prison? And
Your podcast will need to be about 4 hours long, but
yes.
I'll synopsize. We first had one man coming to us from prison, and he came recommended by the chaplain, and he had done well, and it was a low-level offense, but he was from Cleveland, and we are in Western Ohio, and it's a white rural community, and here is a Black man coming from the city. And so all the expectations of prejudice came into play, never spoken, but they're always there. And so he came to our house, and I was very pleased to be able to help him. So, and a newspaper article came out about it. And I thought, well, this will help because we'll get people interested in helping us, because community support is critical. Well, after that, there were petitions to the city council. There were council meetings. There were verbalized threats. There were ongoing legislation that was passed. At one point, it got so hostile that I had police protection going to these meetings. Somebody tried to run me off the road. And at another point, somebody tried to stab me in front of the courthouse. And it was all over fear. And ironically, what we're seeing today, say with the Haitian community in nearby Springfield, irrational fear that is magnified through rumors. And this was before the internet was so active, but today it's 10 times more active. But that breeds people's worst fears, and they build on that and they react to that. And before you know it, they do things they would never normally do individually. So we ended up suing the city 3 different times.
Oh, wow.
But I will say this, Vicki, I will say this. Today, the police department and the courts call us and say, we have a man or a woman that needs a place to stay. Can you house him or her?
Yeah. So talk about the results of this, the successes that you've had for these individuals, because I agree, to have that stable home is so important. I know I worked for UPS, and in Chicago area, we had a whole program where we hired people that got out of prison or were homeless, and found, help find shelters and things for them. But people need a start. So what are some results that you had that kept you saying, okay, yeah, we're doing the right thing?
I think the key factor to keep in mind is that these people are going to be released. They're coming out of prison because they've been given a definite sentence based on their crime. And it may be a year, it may be 2 years, or it may be 30 years. But the state has deemed that they are not rehabilitated, but they've done their punishment. So they are released, but without a place to live or some sort of support system. They'll do whatever is needed to survive.
Right.
We all would.
Yeah.
You scratch the veneer of civilization, we will all do what we have to do to survive, because you can't survive on the street without doing something. So when they come to our house, invariably what somebody will say is, I just want to get a job and my own place. And remember, they don't have family to go back to. That's why they're with us, because this is voluntary. These are people who are homeless twice. They're homeless because of their crime, and they're homeless because there's no family connection. So they're double outcasts. And so what will happen is, if somebody can get a job, I just had a fellow last week. He showed me a picture of his electrician's certificate. He just finished a class, and he's not a journeyman, but he's a trainee, and he got a certificate, and he was so proud of that. And I made sure I stopped by to see him and to personally tell him I was proud of him.
Yeah.
And again, you're dealing with somebody who may not be comfortable with a white man, but we talked the language that was very important to him, and that was his success. So I have found that when I talk to people on their felt need level, that I can communicate much louder than say, you need to do this, or you need to do that. Or somebody will say, just get a job. But if you say, let me help you fill out that application. So as far as success rates, it takes 3 years to officially have somebody who's considered to be returned or rehabilitated. We don't deal with that. We offer you a short stay of 90 days or 6 months or 9 months. And if you did well while you're with us, particularly if you got a job or a stable place to live, we call that a success.
Yeah.
And so we've done our part and you've done your part. The next step is up to you because we can't make you make it, but we can certainly offer you a hand up. And so I would say that if somebody doesn't want to go along with basic rules like making your bed or cleaning up your dishes after you eat or have a curfew, if you don't want to do that, then we simply say, you're welcome to leave. And they may or may not do well, but we've done our part.
Yeah.
And so I will give you a couple anecdotal examples. We had one fella come to us, actually the first resident in the middle of all that controversy, and that's been 22 years. Today, he called me up and he happened to say, hey, I'm reading your book. And I hadn't seen him for several years. And I just want you to know that I'm still married and I'm working for a trucking company. And I've been working here for years and I'm doing well. So that's clearly a success story.
Yeah.
And he was the one who said he was afraid being in a white town because he felt people were looking at him. He felt the same thing you and I feel when we go into a neighborhood that's filled with different color people. And now he's success. And had the same thing with Walter. Walter came to us. He went to prison when he was 16 years old, spent 9 years in prison. And when he came to us, he had no skills. And now today, through one of our mentors, he was given a job at a winery and he's now a manager there.
Okay.
And he's been there for 10 years. And he bought a house in my neighborhood, of all things.
That's good. So, besides the housing that you provide, do you connect them with people that might help them with any mental rehabilitation, whatever else they might need, job skills, help?
We had to come back and say, what is our primary mission? And that was offering safe, affordable housing. But the mental health counseling, the job and family counseling, we immediately defer that to the county. And they in turn refer them to us for housing. So it's a cooperative thing because they can't provide housing.
Right.
Technically, there is a shelter in town, but it only has 6 beds and it's always full.
Yeah.
So we don't pretend to be all services. What we do is, what do we do well, and what can I connect you to someone else who does that well? So the truth is that I would say 80% of our residents deal with either addictions or mental health issues.
Yeah, I would think so.
So we have to defer that.
Very good. So it's time now really for us to just do one rapid fire question. Knowing what you know, all the roads you've traveled on, what's the best advice you would give someone who decides that they want to have a second chance to start over?
That's an excellent question. I think many people, particularly if you look at people coming out of high school or out of college, there's an expectation that success will immediately follow.
Yes.
I need to have a new car, a big house. I need to have my family by the time I'm 25. I need to run this sprint and win. But there are those of us who have a limp. We don't run fast, and sometimes we trip and fall down. So I would say, don't compare yourself to that natural athlete. Just run as fast as you can, but keep running, keep trying. And the best example of that was I saw an ad in the paper in San Antonio for Harrison Ford's doing a television series, and they wanted extras. So I said, I'm not an actor, but what the heck? I put my name in the email for part as an extra. I'm 76 years old, and they called me. And so here I am, fitted out to look like a 1923 upscale Montana rancher for this bit part that probably will never make television, but at least I did it.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
that's the point. At least I did it. And that's what I would recommend. Don't be afraid to fail, but never quit trying.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's like I said, whenever in 2018, I thought, okay, going to be retired. What's that going to look like? And then after 2 years, I said, I'm going to start a business. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it. And you just do.
Exactly right. And let's suppose you make a mistake and it doesn't work. So what?
There's no suppose in there.
There's an old story I learned long ago about the maker of 7-Up. They called it 7-Up for a reason, because he failed 6 times. And the 7th time was a success.
Yeah.
And that's been my philosophy.
That's
that
right.
I may fail, but I will never quit.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, if anyone out there says, well, I need to just read this book, I need to know more, how can I get in touch with John? I'm going to share his contact information. You know the drill. If you are just listening, go grab that paper and pencil that you should have had for all these great things he's been sharing. But if not, I do have everything on my Vicki Noethling YouTube channel. Please subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com website. So the website is johndavidgraham.com. That's johndavidgraham.com. Facebook is J. Graham Author, with initial caps for J. Graham and Author. And Instagram, same thing, J. Graham Author. And TikTok is at J. Graham Author. I'm going to turn it over to John to be able to tell you what his call to action is for you today, how you can get that book running as fast as I can, as well as things that you might also find on his website and any social media that he spends a little bit more time than others. So, John, it's all yours.
I would go to the website. The Amazon site would easiest to find the book, but my personal website, you can link to my Substack page, because I do weekly newsletter columns where I just have fun, just a short newsletter, or I call it just having fun articles. But I do want to add that this is not an academic book. I wrote one of those, and it was had all the research data, and all the 3 people that read it said it was a good book. But this book is a page turner, and the reviews coming back are that I had a woman come up to my wife yesterday, and I hadn't seen her in years, and she's crying, and she said, I'm on the last chapter of your book, and I can't stop crying because it's so emotional. So that's what I'm finding. People are identifying with this book because Daniel Robinson, the main character, is what I call everyone.
Yeah.
And it's in fact, it won just recently. You didn't. I just found out it was awarded the Story Trade Book Awards debut book of the year.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Very, very pleased with that. So, and I started writing when I was 65, and I spent 10 years editing and editing and editing that story to where I feel, and the reviewers feel, that it's a good read. So that's so my commercial moment there. But the truth is, it's a good story. It really is.
Yeah. All right. So again, you can get that book on the link that for Amazon, or there's a link on his website also for you to get the book. John, I knew it would be a great time chatting with you, having a good conversation about your life and what you do, which is so important. And, you know, hopefully other areas of the country will take heart and do more just like it. Because I know one of my youth groups that I work with, we go into the prisons to teach the young inmates how to be more confident as speakers. So when they do go out into the job world again, they can carry themselves well and just a little help.
One of the main characters in the latter half of the book is Charles, who was 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And he ends up teaching Daniel. Like Daniel says, I have 3 degrees. And Charles, who barely has a 4th grade education and spent half his life in prison, knows more about forgiveness than I could ever learn in a textbook.
Oh, wow.
So, and I think that there's what you're doing with the prisons probably is everybody's winning, what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's, the reason I love to work with all the youth, and a lot of them are people who are kind of have a rough time of it. But, I always tell them, you are the future leaders of our world. And I have grandbabies, and I need to know that the world will be a good place when I'm gone. So,
and truth is, if your church is doing this, then I think you're doing what the church is best at doing, not at pointing fingers, but opening a hand to somebody.
Yeah.
I think right now we're pointing a lot of fingers, and we need to be offering a hand up more often. We do that well when we do it.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So as always, I thank you for being such a great guest, and remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.